Before I had the cochlear implant, my hearing was so poor, I had to more or less withdraw from all social life. I became very isolated. Now I just can lead a normal life again. I can enjoy social interaction, I can go to parties, I've got the phone. I'm just leading a normal life of a fully hearing person. And if anybody ever gets the chance to do that, having become deaf, I would say go for it, because it's the best thing that ever happened to me since I became deaf. My biggest loss was that of music. I've always been a great music lover, and not being able to hear music was the worst thing for me, because music you can't compensate for. All the other sounds like doorbells and telephones, I've got a hearing dog, I can communicate people via email or text, but you cannot get music, compensate for music in any way, because you just can't hear it, and there isn't any way that it can be restored without something like a cochlear implant. Well, to me the surgery was just totally non-traumatic. I went in the morning, they sedated me, took me down to theatre. A few hours later I was back in the ward with a great big turban bandage round my head, which stayed on until the next morning. They took it off. I went home with just a little bit of sticking plaster by my ear, and no side effects really. I just got out of bed, had my meals, and it was really just a straightforward, with absolutely no problems and no worries at all. They don't switch you on until about 5 weeks after surgery, so when I went to be switched on, a little bit apprehensive perhaps, I had a friend with me on their recommendation, and they gave me the unit, they switched it on and started talking. To me it sounded at first a little bit like Donald Duck underwater, but I could make out what they were saying, and by the time I left about an hour later, I could have a conversation without any difficulty at all. It sounded a little bit muffled, but you get used to that, and with that combined with a hearing aid, enabled me to hear pretty well most of the time. After the first switch on, I went back at weekly intervals to see the audiologist, and they were fine-tuning the equipment to make adjustments to enable me to hear that much better. Every day I could hear better. It just takes perseverance. You have to practice. They give you tapes to listen to, and you practice listening to those sounds. It can take several months before it reaches optimum value. When I first switched on, I had a first fairly basic processor, but I've been upgraded since, and the improvement is startling, and they're still researching and improving the processors even now. With my first processor, I couldn't really hear music. I could hear a rhythmic sound, but I couldn't hear a tune. Now, with the more up-to-date processors, I can hear music perfectly, even music that I wasn't familiar with before I became deaf. And to me, that's an absolute miracle.